If you're a fan of movies, there's a good chance you intend on seeing this film or this film this summer. In fact, there's a good chance you have plans to see both. While we've yet to see what these films actually have in store, with even a basic understanding of their subject matter, or by even just looking at their posters, it's safe to say that they are going to be very, very different movies. On paper, it looks like this could result in some competition regarding ticket sales, but if you've been following the trajectory of these movies over the course of the year, you probably know as much as I do that this actually might not be the case. Be it the mimetic ways of the modern internet, or the whiplash tastes of Twitter cinephiles, it looks like not only will one film not damage the other's ticket sales, it may even increase the sales of the other. Christopher Nolan's Barbenheimer and Greta Gerwig's Barbie could not be more different than the other, but that is not going to stop this dual release from becoming possibly one of film history's best double features. This may have been a different story had these releases occurred, say, 10 or 15 years ago. I think the weird pseudo-irony saturating digital conversations in 2023 shape our tastes more than we care to admit, and what could be more indicative of that than the ongoing discussions of these specific films? I'm not saying this is always a bad thing. I actually really like memes that result from contrasting two very tonally different yet tangentially related IPs. But to not acknowledge the effect funny little pictures or tweets have on these topics would be missing a big part of the pop culture stemming from these specific moments. That being said, you can bet that I absolutely intend on seeing both of these films, and probably on the same day. I love double features, and all of this has been a very good chance to indulge in exactly that. It has also given me a very good excuse to discuss what it is about them I love so much. You probably already know what a double feature is by this point, but if not, it's right there in its name. Two different features, one after the other. I'm not too sure how often they occur in an official sense in the US or other parts of the world, but here in Canada, regular theaters often don't advertise actual double features. You can still get that experience though, at least in rural areas, by driving to your nearest drive-in theater, which almost always plays new releases as double bills, at least from my experience. Park your car and let the evening take you away as you watch the newest Marvel movie followed by, say, the newest Blumhouse release. Even if the night is planned around watching a new movie you want to see, the experience is rounded out to encompass the whole night out. If you want to do a double feature at a regular theater though, chances are you're going to have to do so by organizing around two separate viewings of each film. Not too difficult to manage, just less convenient. Though there was a time when double features were actually the norm, at least in the US. Researching for this video, I was very not shocked to discover that double features rose to prominence as a means to make more money, as all things are it seems. In the 1930s, theater owners in the US were understandably struggling. No one was going out to shows because no one had money to do so. This resulted in theaters using various gimmicks to entice people to attend. Eventually, this led to sales of double bills, in which moviegoers would get two films for the price of a single ticket. This wasn't some new concept though. Prior to the popularity of films and sound, theater experiences took a more vaudeville approach, incorporating a few acts such as stage performances and newsreels before the actual feature. In this way, I like to think that going to the theater has and always will be an experience, rather than just something to do. Which I guess kinda is what an experience is. Anyways, I like this part of the history. But greed always has its place in these things, as major movie studios hopped on the bandwagon as well. Another big reason for the rise of double features is something called block booking. Block booking was a system utilized by said major studios in which they would require theaters to purchase multiple films at once. This was a way to ensure that the studios could also make ticket sales for quote-unquote lesser films that didn't have the draw of features with big stars and big budgets. Buy a ticket for that new big movie you want to see and get a free ticket to another lesser known film. In theory, I kinda like this, as it gave a chance for smaller films made by lesser known crews and actors a chance in the spotlight they otherwise wouldn't have received. This is widely believed to be the beginning of the concept of B-movies too, which is kind of cool. In application, it couldn't have been more predatory though, as these studios would expect theaters to blind purchase an entire slate of to-be-produced films, having no idea of their quality or ticket buying potential. This can be directly attributed to Paramount Pictures and film producer Adolf Zukor. Under the suggestion of general manager Al Lichtman, Zucker implemented a system in which Paramount would produce 52 films a year, selling the entire program to theaters in advance. This became the standard practice, as the other major studios adopted similar programs, requiring films to be bought in massive blocks and leaving many independent theaters in financial ruin. This eventually resulted in Paramount flat out purchasing full chains of theaters and forcing block booking contracts on them that they'd have to sign in order to gain access to the prestige Paramount Pictures. This went on through the 30s until reaching a boiling point in which the Department of Justice got involved and filed a suit called the United States vs. Paramount Pictures Inc., claiming that major studios were violating the Sherman Antitrust Act by means of exclusivity dealing, eliminating free competition of the market in question, creating a movie theater oligopoly. Eventually the suit was settled in 1940 when the big studios signed a decree that, among other things, made it so block booking could no longer be used to book more than 5 films at a time. Double features remained popular for about another 20 years though. The focus just changed from displaying large films alongside small films, A-list and the aforementioned B-movies, and became more so about just showing 2 good, equally advertised films as a double bill. Since home televisions weren't really a thing yet, this allowed things like re-releasing older films to be viewed alongside their newly released sequels, or double viewings based on specific actors or directors. This wouldn't last though, and major features being single ticket releases became the norm, and double features became the product of nostalgia, generally only existing in drive-ins and special events. These last 20 some odd years of the popularity of double features are where I think the real worth of the experience starts to shine. Watching films beside each other, be they directly related or not, has a cool effect on the whole experience, and even if the motives are still profit, I think theaters and studios are catching on to something special. Say you're a big fan of Marilyn Monroe. You could go spend an evening and just indulge in an entire night consisting of watching 2 of her films. Say, Niagara and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Now the night isn't just about checking out a film, it's about having an experience as a fan of Marilyn Monroe movies. Or if you really want to check out the new James Bond film Goldfinger, but can't quite remember what happened in last year's From Russia with Love, well, now you have an entire night to catch up with the titular spy. To be more specific, I think the real magic of double features is the way in which one film enhances the experience of the other. Which brings me back to Oppenheimer/Barbie. These movies could not be more different, but I and many others are very excited about the prospect of what it will be like to live in the headspace of both of these films in the same day. Maybe Barbie will be a palate cleanser to the nihilism of the upsetting true history of Oppenheimer and the atomic bomb. Or maybe Oppenheimer's serious nature will be refreshing after the bubblegum visuals of Barbie. I use double features as the primary example, but I think it's not exclusive to 2 films in a row, or even films in general. It could just be the nostalgia factor, but it is no coincidence that many of us use movie marathons as comfort food in difficult times, or even just as a fun group experience. I'm willing to bet a great number of you have spent an entire night or weekend watching all of the Lord of the Rings or Star Wars on more than one occasion. It's like for a great deal of hours you get to truly escape and live in a world that you really cherish, and you can do so anytime you want, as long as you have the DVDs or the streaming services. Or something I do frequently is rewatch all of the original films in a series if a new entry is being released, as I just did with the newest John Wick. And this doesn't have to be just films either. I remember my mom rereading all of the Harry Potter books before the midnight release of the Deathly Hallows, and before we found out J.K. Rowling sucks. As a capital G gamer, I often play major game series back to back so that I can maximize immersion and see the complete growth of characters and stories. I'm actually on my millionth replay of the Metal Gear series right now, that I'm doing in release order, though I usually do timeline order. In that vein, it can also be fun to rearrange the orders of things to offer a different experience. A famous example of this is all the many ways you can watch the Star Wars films. You could do release order, giving weight to the history of the Republic as you've already seen the downfall, Or you could watch The Downfall as It Happens, watching from episode 1, which reframes the prequel trilogy as more of a political tragedy, I find. I also found a cool rearranged order online called the Machete Order, which starts in episode 4, then 5, before dipping back to episode 2 then 3, before coming back to conclude on 6. This kind of hones in specifically on Anakin's arc into Vader, and the weight that has on Luke as we directly go into his Jedi Knight origin story after discovering Vader is his father. My only real gripe with this order is its exclusion of Phantom Menace, as I am an episode 1 apologist. Really though, I'm just a sucker for existing in a specific mood or theme, and marathons and double features are a great way to specifically access them, and I just really wanted to share just how awesome I think that is. So as fun as all this boring history and anecdotal stuff was, I think the actual best way to show all of this is by giving some direct examples and even some recommendations, if my opinion matters to you at all. In the process of making this video, my very fulfilling research was to just hunt down and experience a bunch of fun double features, and come back with my results here. So if you don't care much for the chatty bits and just want some cool recs or potential ideas for nights in, I'll be using the rest of this video as a chance to share some cool little double features I tried out recently. Also, if it's not obvious, I'm all ears for recommendations of your own discovered double features / makeshift marathons. So please feel free to share anything you've come up with in the comments, as I am basically always looking for different chances to do exactly this.